So the fresh new Nokia G50 smartphone is one big budget blower, and when I say big, I mean that very much in the literal sense, because this thing is so massive that even clowns would probably struggle to fit it inside of their ridiculously oversized pants. The Nokia G50 hits the UK from today and will cost you just 199 quid. It's a gargantuan 5G ready smartphone with a stock Android UI and guaranteed OS updates. So if you like it big but you're strapped for cash, this could very well be the one for you. Now stay tuned for my in-depth Nokia G50 review, that'll be landed very shortly indeed, but for now let's whip it on out of the box, take you on a full-on tour of the hardware and the software, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! If you're a bit impatient, well there's all of the Nokia G50 specs at a glance, including a good bit of French translation, charge rapide. So what do you get in that box besides of course the Nokia G50? Well, as usual, you've got like a million friggin' manuals in every language going. You've got one adapter to charge up your Nokia G50, and hold on to your pants because there's even a Type-C USB cable. And that's it, very simple stuff. And so this here is the Nokia G50, and all I can say is if you thought the Nokia XR20 was a bit of a house brick, well, the G50 is very much of the same ilk. Now the Nokia G50 is a hefty wee bugger, weighing in at 220 grams, which is very similar to sort of premium gaming smartphones which are packed with all kinds of tech and generally quite on the large side as well. It certainly could never be described as slender, that is for sure. It's quite a chunky monkey, and yeah, no, definitely a bit of a palm filler as well. Let's say two-handed use at all times is probably going to be advisable. If you're paranoid about anyone lifting your smartphone out of your pocket without you realizing it, well, you'll certainly notice if this thing gets pinched. It's an all-plastic construction, as you would expect, plastic edging and a separate plastic back end as well, which you can grab in two different Scandinavian colours, this here ocean blue or also midnight sun. Gotta say, I quite like the blue model. It's kind of dark and mysterious and a very simple finish, as you can see there, literally the Nokia branding, the camera chassis, and that is it on that back end. The camera does jut out ever so slightly, but not to a horrific degree. You've got your edge-mounted fingerprint sensor there, which doubles up as the power button, volume rocker, headphone jack up top, which is always great to see, Type-C USB connection down below. And yeah, one of those pesky dedicated Google Assistant buttons over on the left edge. And despite the fact you've got a frickin' enormous 6.82-inch display here on the Nokia G50, they've still managed to find a bit of room to squeeze in a second bit of Nokia branding there just beneath the display. Let's just crack open that SIM tray and see, hopefully we should have a couple of different SIM slots. And indeed you do, so you can stick in a couple of SIMs at once, otherwise that second slot can be used for a micro SD memory card to expand the storage. So here we go, a lovely little bit of Nokia G50 action ready and raring to go. And as with all Nokia branded smartphones, you've got a lovely stock version of the latest Android 11 on here. No real crapware stuffed on here, a couple of random little apps like ExpressVPN, but everything else I've put on there myself. Or it's just your standard Google shenanigans. Unfortunately, customization is quite limited here on the Nokia G50, so I've stuck on my own geeky anime background, but apart from that, you are very, very limited in what you can do. So for instance, you can't get rid of this pesky search bar thing down at the bottom, you're stuck with that. And also there's no way of remapping that Google Assistant button to any other apps that you might happen to use. The best you can manage is just disable it in those settings. And to be fair, at least you've got that option because it is rather awkwardly positioned right in the middle of that left edge. So I can see myself fumbling that by accident quite a bit when I'm slipping the Nokia G50 back into my pocket, for instance. One of the best things about the Nokia branded smartphones is the future proofing as well. Manufacturer HMD Global is promising 2 years of Android OS updates and 3 years of security updates for this thing as well. So not quite as much as some of its siblings. You know, some of the Nokia branded smartphones come with 3 years of Android OS updates and 4 years of security updates, but pretty damn good all the same. And all your typical smartphone features that you'd expect to find even on a £200 handset are present and correct here on the Nokia G50, including a good bit of NFC for your contactless payments. And touch wood, so far that edge-mounted fingerprint sensor seems nice and responsive, so you don't even have to press in the power button, just tap your digit to the surface, and as you can see, nice and swift. And as an alternative option to that fingerprint sensor, you've also got face unlock, which as you can see takes a little bit longer just to scan and recognize your mug. Doesn't seem to work when you're wearing a face mask, which I guess is good from a security viewpoint. As for the storage, well, it's a choice of either 64 or 128 gigs of internal space here on the Nokia G50, but you do have that micro SD support up to 512 gigs, so plenty of extra space if you need it. Now that display, as I've mentioned before, a chuffing massive 6.82-inch panel, so you can certainly make the most of the 5G connectivity on the Nokia G50 by streaming shed loads of Netflix, Disney Plus, or some talentless, gormless plonker on YouTube. Sadly, it's an HD Plus screen, not Full HD Plus, so because of the size of this panel, you know, the images don't look supremely crisp, let's say, but you know, there's enough detail packed in there so you can enjoy flipping through your photo album, you can, you know, watch a movie, no worries. You know, visuals aren't grainy, just not quite as crisp as most rivals at this price point. Viewing angles are perfectly fine. On the top brightness level, you might struggle outdoors, but certainly indoors use was absolutely no problem whatsoever. And for an IPS panel, the color reproduction is reasonably vibrant. You know, it's good enough to make images not look dull or lifeless. And yes, you do have one of those quaint old nipple notches poking its way ever so slightly into proceedings when you go full screen, but nothing too major. Sadly though, the Nokia G50 does make do with a 60Hz display. There's no support for 90Hz refresh, despite the fact it's an IPS panel, so lots of rivals from the likes of Realme and Motorola and Xiaomi at this sort of price point do offer that faster refresh for supported apps. As for your audio, well, as mentioned before, you got that headphone jack, which is fantastic to see. You got your Bluetooth 5 support if you want to go wireless instead, and you do have a mono speaker setup. So let's bump up the volume on the Nokia G50 and see if that speaker output is class or cack.
Now, if one of your main requirements from your new smartphone is something that's supremely shiny, then good news.
Well, it's perfectly serviceable, certainly gets loud enough on that top volume where you should hopefully be able to cut through a fair bit of background clamour when watching a bit of YouTube or whatever. But of course, as you would probably expect, quite a tinny output as well, so I'd definitely say stick to your headphones. Now, power and proceedings here on the Nokia G50 is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 480 chipset, as coincidentally also found on the Motorola Moto G50, as well as Nokia's own X10 and X20 handsets which recently launched. And it's backed here on the Nokia G50 by either 4 or 6 gigs of RAM, depending on how much money you throw at HMD Global, basically. And fairly basic performance, as you tend to get out of the Snapdragon 400 series chipsets. As you can see there, any Geekbench fans, you've got quite low single and multi-core scores. But that said, other smartphones that I've tested using that Snapdragon 480 chipset, they generally handle everyday life absolutely fine. Yeah, I'm talking media streaming, browsing the internet, all that kind of shenanigans, but I am going to give it a super quick Call of Duty test right now, just to see how it handles a bit of light gaming. So I had a quick frantic blast here on Call of Duty Mobile on the Nokia G50, and despite the fact that I bumped up the graphics to the higher detail settings and higher frame rate, it was a nice consistently smooth experience. The frame rate stayed strong and stable throughout. Found that the screen was nice and responsive as well, so touches and swipes all instantly registered, so great for these fast-paced online fragathons. And certainly the spacious display did help because you get a clear view of the action, anyone lurking in the distance. I think that smooth frame rate has probably helped along as well by the fact that you've got that stock Android experience here, so there's no heavy launchers sat on top of Android, which might potentially make things a bit more sluggish. And as mentioned, of course, one of the other benefits of the Snapdragon 480 chipset, other than the fact that it's quite energy efficient, so therefore should hopefully get good battery life out of the Nokia G50, is the fact that you've got the built-in 5G modem as well, so you've got that future-proof connectivity. And speaking of the battery life, you've got 5,000 milliamp cell tucked away inside of the mighty frame of the Nokia G50, and again, because of that energy efficient platform, that should easily give you all day use, even if you're never off the sodden thing. And yeah, you've got a big display to power here, but it is only a 720p panel, so it shouldn't sap too much juice. I reckon with quite conservative use, HMD Global's estimate of 2 full days of use on a single charge is probably pretty much on the money. There is only 18-watt fast charge support, so it will take a little while to juice back up again. And last up, let's take a squint at the back end of the Nokia G50. Again, check out that triple lens rear camera. Now, it's a 48 megapixel primary camera sensor, does use 4-in-1 pixel binning to produce 12 megapixel photos by default. And as you can see there, you do have an AI mode on board as well. So this can suggest to you switching to different features. For instance here, a bit of portrait mode, because I'm shooting the lovely, gorgeous Veronica. I want to focus just on her slightly lifeless gaze. You can, if you want to, change up not only the aspect ratio, but also the resolution that you're shooting in, all the way up to 48 meg if you prefer that. Lots of bonus modes to play around with, including the aforementioned portrait mode, of course, which just allows you to add a lovely bokeh style effect in the background, various snowflakes, butterflies, whatever you fancy. You've also got a night mode to help out with those low light shots, and a couple of other bonus bits as well, including a full-on pro mode. If you know what you're doing, you know your way around, for instance, a DSLR or whatever, so you can play around with the ISO levels and all that to get a very precise kind of result. And this bad boy offers you the option to shoot in RAW format, if you like. The rest of the camera setup here on the back end of the Nokia G50, not particularly exciting. You've got a basic 5 megapixel ultra wide angle lens, which I'm not expecting much out of, but it's there if you want a slightly more pulled back viewpoint. You've also got a 2 megapixel depth sensor to help out with the likes of the portrait mode. Now, if you swap to video mode, you are quite limited, as you can see there. That's because of the Snapdragon 480 chipset more than anything else. You can only shoot full HD footage at either 30 or 60 frames per second, no 4K option. I think that HMD is hoping that everyone's going to do a bit of vlogging on the Nokia G50 though, because apparently you've got a built-in stabilization feature for that selfie shooter. It's an 8 megapixel snapper, so still fairly basic, but yeah, I'll definitely be giving that a whirl for my in-depth review. So that right there in a nutshell is the Nokia G50. Just a quick unboxing and whipping around the hardware and the software to whet your appetite for my in-depth Nokia G50 review, which hopefully should be coming in just a couple of days. So it'd be great to hear your early thoughts on this bad boy down below. As you can see, you know, you've got some strong rivals from the likes of Xiaomi, the Redmi smartphones, for instance, Realme, Motorola, etc. But some decent specs packed in there. So if you want them big and bulky, well, the Nokia G50 certainly will not disappoint on that front. Lovely, slick, stock bit of Android action with those guaranteed updates, of course, and 5G support as well. So yeah, so definitely smash your comments down below. Please do poke subscribe, ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a fantastic rest of the week. Cheers, everyone. Love you.